Hello, my name is Ivy Prosper, and I tell stories from Africa and the African diaspora. Today, I am bringing you a woman who has been one of the pioneers of this whole diaspora movement in this generation. Her name is Christabel Dadzie, and she is the founder of Ahaspora. If you haven't heard of Ahaspora, then you're missing out, because Ahaspora is perhaps the first organization that was in Ghana helping the diaspora when they move here, especially those who were coming from North America and needed a soft landing and needed an understanding of the lay of the land. She provided that for the community long before the year of return, long before Beyond the Return, she was doing this. And I know that now we have a lot of different diaspora organizations who are also providing services, but she was a pioneer, and I thought it was important to talk to her and get you to know who she is and what she's doing, because they're still doing things that are key for the diaspora community, still having events, still having conferences, conversations that will benefit you. Because I know that most of you who watch this program are from the diaspora, whether you're in the diaspora and thinking about coming to Ghana or you're already here. We also have Ghanaians who are also watching the channel as well. And I know that you want to connect with the diaspora because we have to. We are brothers and sisters who've been disconnected, and we need to come back together. So let's get into the conversation with Christabel today. Christabel, I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Thank you for having me.
Oh yeah, it's long overdue.
Right.
Like long overdue. So I briefly did a quick introduction about yourself, but if you could also go into a little bit of detail about who you are, where you came from, because a lot of people come from the diaspora, come back to Ghana, start businesses, and you did live abroad before coming back. So where did you go, and then why did you come back?
So as you said, my name is Christabel Dadzie. I'm founder of Ahaspora Professionals Network. We did start as Ahaspora Young Professionals, but let's just say young at heart, but over time it changes. So we rebranded to Ahaspora Professionals Network. I used to live in the United States for over a decade. I did undergrad, graduate school, worked for a bit before I moved home. And I moved home literally because I woke up on January 1, 2010 and said my New Year's resolution is to go back home.
Just out of the blue?
Well, I've been thinking about it.
Okay.
So I'm from a family where it's at the back of your mind to go, gain experiences, and then come back home.
Okay.
Nobody really says it to you, but I had that wrangling in the back of my mind. It was time. And it was also because, if I'm being honest, I was at a stage in life that I would have settled. I had an excellent job, apartment, car, the whole 9 yards. Those are paid for. In a relationship, all of those things that just make you start
getting
settling down.
Yeah.
And I was getting comfortable, and I could feel it. And so I started thinking through, if I'm ever going to make this move, which I should, when will it be? And I wouldn't say it was necessarily the right timing. It just made sense at the point because I was feeling the edge to stay. So my New Year's resolution, like I said, January 1, 2010, was to leave by the end of the year. Now, I'm not one of those who are courageous enough to get up and come with no job and all of that. I'm a planner, so I had to give myself that year. But interestingly enough, once I made up my mind to do it, I got a job in early May, and I left on June 1, 2010.
Wow. So what industry were you in the U.S., and then what industry did you end up coming into in Ghana?
I worked in international development. So I studied development economics, international affairs, undergrad political science, so in that arena. And I worked for a public policy organization in the U.S., doing U.S. public policy, Medicare, Medicaid, education policy. So it was right up my alley, so to speak, in terms. It was actually different because I studied international development, but I ended up starting off with U.S. policy, which was a big learning curve for me and really a growth period. So I did that, and it was really good. Like I said, it was a good job, good exposure. We worked with different U.S. agencies, and then I wrote a bunch of proposals for USAID for the organization. So I was starting to get them into international affairs, which was really nice as well. So that's what I was doing in the U.S. I was living in the DMV area, Maryland, going to work in Washington. And then I decided it was time. So I told my employer way before, because it was something I wanted to do.
And how did your employer feel? Because I don't think that an employer will feel good knowing that, you know, someone who's working for them is openly telling them that they might leave.
You know, sometimes I wonder if it was a little bit of youthful exuberance, but I'm just as honest as it comes. And I felt like I wanted to do right by them, which they really appreciated. I'm still very in touch and close to them because I didn't burn a bridge. They knew I was coming. I gave them the heads up. I gave plenty of notice, which is something I tell youth these days. Like, you need to be intentional about these relationships, because you never know what happened. And I actually have a fun story, which was I did come home, and then 3 years later, one of the proposals that I had worked on for the USAID actually got awarded, and the same boss called me.
Oh.
Yes, the same boss called me and said, hey, this thing happened, you know, you had worked on it. Would you be interested in coming over and getting it going? And I did for 3 years. So, you know, fast forward to doing the right thing. It came and it became a blessing to me. I went back, worked on this baby of mine, which was huge USAID. I was a 3-year program across the world. I was traveling the world, working on evaluations. And this was all as a result of the bridge that I did not burn.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And the fact that you had those relationships also helped you once you came to Ghana.
Absolutely. So the way the story goes is I'm on Delta Airlines, and this is a true story. It does sound fake, but it's true. So I'm on Delta Airlines, and I literally closed my eyes, and in my mind's eye, I'm not sure if I was actually dreaming, but I was somewhere in my thinking, and I was thinking how great it would be if everybody on this plane was making that one-way, because I had a one-way ticket, was making that one-way trip back to the continent to give back somehow. You know, and, you know, at some point the air hostess wakes me up to eat, and I realize, oh, actually I'm the only person I know in this setting. But I come down, and, you know, the air that blows from Kotoka just hits your face, and I'm home, and I'm just in a good space. And then I come to a Ghana where this was just around the time that the U.S. economic crisis had happened.
Yes, because I was.
If you remember,
yes, I remember.
2007-ish.
8, 9, 10.
Exactly.
Yeah, I
came
remember.
10. But it was the time that crisis had happened, and a lot of Ghanaians had to come home because they were laid off, you know, and they were in H1 work visas.
Right.
And so if your organization lays you off, you have to come home.
leave, yeah.
And they did, but what happened, you know, I'm a researcher, so I started looking at pictures and piecing it together. And what I realized was there were a lot of young Ghanaians in the finance system who had come home, and now were taking over our telcos, our banks, in a way that hadn't happened. Rewind to maybe 7 years earlier, my brother had moved home also from the US, doing cutting edge technology. And when you talk to him, he was doing well, right? But he would tell me his biggest issue was being young. They would go, they would apply do the proposal presentations for whatever technology solution, and they will be told you are the best, and then somebody else will get it, and you find out that it is because in our culture, it's true, stability comes with age. You know, so are you really here for the right reasons? Are you going to stay? All these questions that come with being a young person. And so fast forward now to maybe almost a decade later, seeing that, you know, while he had done very well, and others like him, there was a whole new breed of people coming home. And if you remember, let's be real, Ghana was open for business. There was this fire in the system. So as I would meet with these friends naturally from the US, and listening to our complaints, like I said, oh, the electricity's not working, the trotros don't drive properly, the entire 9 yards. I would start writing about it, and I called it the good, the bad, the ugly. So I literally would pour out my soul in terms of things. And I'll give you an example. So there was once that I woke up. So I was working for a US firm that I came into Ghana to help them set up their Africa group. And I felt like I was lazy. And I'd never felt that in my life before. I work around the clock. I'm literally, I mean, if I'm being honest, a workaholic, right? So I started trying to figure out what is it that is making me feel like I'm lazy. And then one day I got an epiphany: traffic and heat.
Yes. Yes, you know, because I used to always wonder. I was like, why do Ghanaians move so slow? When I first moved, like 2011, I stayed for 2 years,
Right.
and I was like, people are moving so slow. And then I realized, oh,
That's what it is.
the heat.
That's what it is. It drains your energy.
Yeah.
And if you don't think about it to rehydrate all the time, it's real. And then traffic, if you're driving, you're spending half your day driving, which also makes you tired. So if I was doing 14-hour days in the US, I can't do it. Right? But the thing that it did for me was once I understood these simple little things,
Yeah.
it helped me, one, communicate with my people in the US to understand that it's a different setting, but also to be at peace with myself, you know, and actually just take, you know, so will you work in little pieces, start, stop, take a break, you know. But until you get there, it can be very frustrating. So I'm writing these things, right? And people who have lived abroad are just like, oh my God, Christabel, this is amazing. It happened to me. I hadn't thought about it. And then people who had lived home felt offended. They felt like I was in on an attack of Ghana.
Yeah.
So very quickly, I started seeing these divides between those who've left and those who've not left. And I started thinking, one, for those of us who left, how can we change our complaints into solutions? And then for those of us who never left, how can we bridge and see each other as resources? Because to me, those who are here who understand the system are the biggest resource. Think about it, being a foreigner in your own country, which is what I was. So initially, I used to apologize for my new setting, right? And then over time, I decided I was going to own it. Because, you know, I come in, have an accent. At that time, it was like dialed up, right? Speak very fast, walk very fast. Like, I'm just on the move. People are like, you're too known. Like, why are you so quick? What's going on? For a lot of people, maybe you've even lost the language. I could speak Tree, I could understand, but it was still not, I had to think a little bit more. So here I am, who is in my own country, but I'm a foreigner. And I dare say it's one of the most difficult places to be, because if you're a foreigner abroad, you've already set yourself up so that you can deal with the system. You know you're not one of them. So you're going to learn to adapt. You're going to start speaking quickly so that they don't shout and say, what's your name? I didn't understand. You know what I mean? Like you figure it out.
Yeah.
But you come back home and you think you can just come and be part of society, and you're not.
Yeah.
You know, the people you knew bunched together after high school, because I left for college, and they met in university. A lot of them are married to each other or in, you know, certain societies with each other, and you're lost, right? So for me, it was a quick thing to say, what will make me stay? I had watched my big sister come and leave, and part of it was that I didn't see her get a system, right, to help her, to support her. My brother was here, and he got a system really quickly, and he was thriving.
Because he never left, so he still had his network of people.
He actually did leave, but
he did.
had,
okay.
What was different about him is he had 2 friends from high school that had stayed very, very, very close.
Okay. So
and when he came back, even one of them was the partner in his business he started.
Okay.
So that helped.
Okay.
Now, if you don't have that, it's difficult. So having an affinity group of some sort, church, charity, whatever it is,
schoolmates is big here.
Huge.
Schoolmates are huge.
And my mates were there, but I was just lost. In fact, what I did when I first came is I started to get my group together. And it wasn't, what they don't know is, wasn't about that. It was because I felt lost, you know. But even then we would meet, it wasn't the same. But when I would meet with folks who had come back home unintentionally, but they were here anyways, we had more in common. And so I started asking myself, does this exist, right? And didn't quite find it. There was the US Ghana alumni that was really thriving at the time. And I liked it a lot, but I also wanted it to be a bit more than the United States. So one big thing for me was, particularly for those of us who had left, to figure out how we stopped just complaining and come up with some solutions. And it so happened that I decided to invite friends over to lunch. Food works, if you have an idea.
Yes.
Put food around it,
eat.
Bring people, and then the juices start rolling out. So I invited people over to lunch. It was 11 friends, or 12, and I can't remember now, at my mom's house. And we had lunch, and then I said to them, look, people, we've been talking a lot about problems and coming back home, but it's clear that all of us came home and we're making a difference. So how cool will it be if we can get a critical mass of those of us who've returned and really do some cool stuff for the country?
Yeah.
Now, mind you, for me, I'm a development worker, right? So I'm thinking one of my pet peeves since I came back is I would follow parliamentary proceedings, and I felt like it was very clear that a lot of the parliamentarians hadn't read the actual like laws or briefs or whatever you call it. So I was like, how cool will it be if, you know, with the knowledge we have, we can synthesize these things for the parliamentarians and make sure that when they're making the laws, it's actually things that they know and, you know, can make good laws for us. And around the room, everybody starts laughing at me because I'm actually filled in the room with finance and tech people who are looking for money. They're like, Parliament, what, right? But it was nice because then we started a checklist of the different things we could do together. Another one was an idea of having like a real estate, like a community where we would all live and then, you know, thrive there. There was different things. There was a Manchurian candidate's idea. There was a lot of ideas. And we just kind of started writing them all down. And then we said, you know, one of the things we should do is make this organic. You know, let's just let it create itself. So we had one of my friends, David, who is a tech guy, who decided to support us in putting together a listserv. So we put together a Google listserv where the idea was just ask any questions, because one of the data points I had seen was in that being a foreigner in your own country, one of the biggest issues is access to information. Example, I found out 3 years after I had shipped down my car that in the first shipment, I could have gotten a major discount as a diaspora, a returnee.
Really?
Yes. Yes, I found out, well, I mean, the car had come and was, you know.
You're already using
but
it.
this is the kind of thing that I felt like there's just not, you know, we're a very oral society, so it's not a wrong thing. It's just when you go to the West, you get used to
everything's written, just Google and you find it.
Exactly, and that's not the case. So I was like, how about we put a community together where we answer each other's questions in this informal way, but, you know, together. And so that was agreed, and then that was really what we did. And then to the name. So my mother is the one who called me Ahaspora, and it was a joke. You know, she was like, you're no longer diaspora, now you're you know, here. So I mentioned it to the friends that I'd met, and they were like, oh, this is brilliant. Let's call it Ahaspora.
Oh,
and
wow.
that's really how the community was
From your
birthed.
mom.
My mother gets the credit for calling me Ahaspora. It was totally a joke, but it fit perfectly.
Yeah.
So here from the diaspora.
Yeah.
And the network was birthed on 11th April 2011.
Wow.
Yes.
Thanks, Mom.
I know, right? Yes, indeed.
So once the network was birthed, what was the first call to action that you did?
So the first call to action was online community. So bringing people, and it was a referral basis, which was really good because then it's the right people. One of the things I did say to the friends that met was, let's make sure we have anybody who's interested. Because as I said, our biggest resources is folks who've been home. They know the ins and outs and they can support us. So it shouldn't be just those of us from the diaspora. Let's have a mix. You fill out a form. Actually, the form came later because I also realized over time that I was losing data by just putting people on without knowing anything about them. So that was also a learning. And I'll tell you, a lot of Ahaspora has been learning as we go, starting small little projects and then expanding. So it was the online listserv that was like our first action. And then we started saying, but we want to meet. And prior to, we'd been just hanging out naturally after work, you know, like happy hour style. So we decided to start monthly happy hours where we would bring anybody who wants to come together for a social networking. People would meet, talk about jobs, housing, do a little bit of complaining, but also, you know, partners, investments, that kind of stuff. And for me, I think one of the things that made me really see how powerful these social networkings were was when folks would come and say, I got off the plane yesterday and they told me, if you want to stay in Ghana, come to Ahaspora networking. I was like, you're kidding. He's like, no, absolutely. Or I was literally leaving and a friend of mine said, hey, I'm going to Ahaspora networking, come with me. Came and met people like myself, realized that this is something I can do, build partnerships for a new project, and I'm staying. You know, so as an idea that was just to build community actually turned into a social enterprise to some extent.
You were making impact.
Absolutely.
I actually went to a couple of those meetings.
Excellent.
In 2012, 2013. Yeah. So I saw the beginnings of what you were doing, and and it's really grown.
It has. It absolutely has. You know, one of the things that we did do intentionally was to move around Accra, because we were thinking, let's build local economic development. So for a lot of the supposedly little things we do, we think big about it. Like, what can it do in the end to the country? So we would move around different restaurants so that we're giving money to the local economy while we're also building our own empire, so to speak. And then, you know, over time, it was, we need to do more than a happy hour. So we started these action fora. And what those were if there were things happening in society, we would meet, sit, and then discuss from where we sit, how can we draw in solutions? What can we do together? And a few people would gather and run with it. So a lot of what we've done at Ahaspora has really been, let me call it an instigator or an enabler, where we bring people together, we connect the dots, and then we let them run off. You know, so in a lot of ways, and as you know, an administrator, I'll be honest, it can be a bit frustrating for us because you don't necessarily see what you're doing until the stories come back to you.
Right.
Because we really were kind of a catalyst. That's the word I'm looking for. We set the fire, and then people run with it, and then go do their own thing and become big and great.
I was even wondering how you measure it, but you've just mentioned that it was hard to measure unless they come back with their stories.
It is.
And so now you started off with a small group of members. How big is it now, years later? It's like, what, 13 years? Is it 13 years?
Yes, now 13. So we started off with 12 people, and over time, we're about 55 by the end of that same year. And today we have more than 3,000 in our database.
3,000 now?
Yes, we have more than 3,000 people in our database. And we have people who are not in our database who are connected as well. So it's really grown. And the 3,000 number came a couple years ago. You know, so it's really grown. But we've been intentional. So at the beginning, we're kind of just like, oh, we want people, right? But then we started being intentional. Like I said, we put together a form so that people would put like just basic data. And I'll tell you a story. When Prince Charles was coming to Ghana, the British High Commission got in touch with me, said, oh yeah, I was referred to you to try and find UK Ghanaians. And I never really looked at what data we were collecting.
Yeah.
Then I went in, at that time maybe we were about 1,500, something like that. And I went into our database and 400 Ghanaians from the UK.
Wow.
Just like that.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we sent over the list to the British High Commission. And like you said, my roots are from the US, but now I'm more UK than anything else after being able to give them that data. And folks were able to connect and meet with Prince Charles, and since then be a part of that community. But the data is important. Data is key. But like any social science, it's difficult to be able to. There's a lot of people who've gotten jobs because of Ahaspora, because what has happened is you have these companies hearing that there's this group that is local but global, glocal as they say, right? And so if you go there and you post your job there, you're gonna get the right folks for the most part.
I used to get emails forwarded to me that was from the Ahaspora database. People would say, oh, Ahaspora had a job listing, and you know, this was around 2016, 2017. People would be sending these emails. So it's very real what you were doing.
It's extremely real. It's extremely real. But like the tough part becomes, you get the job, but you won't come tell me that you got it because of Ahaspora. So that's the piece that has made it a bit more difficult. However, you know, I celebrate the wins, right? Because what ended up happening is we've just evolved over time. We got into, I want to say maybe 2020, maybe 18 is when we actually started getting governments coming to us. And a lot of the things that we've done has been as a result of referrals. So we had government come to us and say, hey, we've heard of this group. We're working on the diaspora engagement policy. Would like your feedback. Same thing, STEM policy, entrepreneurship policy. So we're seen as this group that were Ghanaians, but had this global mindset. So anytime they were looking for that global mindset, they would tap into us. So here we were, something we'd never planned to do, giving input to policies for our country. And this actually, I'll be honest, that for me, that was when the dynamic changed, that I realized it's not about you anymore.
Yeah.
This is something that makes sense. It's a movement. And the dream from day one about Africans coming home, you're actually doing it. by supporting those who've come to stay. You know, another really big point for us was we started a mentoring program because we're trying to figure out how to actually intentionally give back. And one of my big things has always been supporting the youth. And we thought about it a lot, you know, should we do university? It's easier, they're older, they're understanding. It's like, no, let's start them young. So we started a high school mentoring program called Changing Mindsets, Channeling Our Future. So the tagline is just changing mindsets. And we'll take in high schoolers in first and second year. And they had a day-long event of 100 kids with people they likely wouldn't meet. Bernard Avler, Manifest, Isian Sam, Salom Adadevo. We've had a really good group, and what we tried to do was we bring in corporate or regular jobs, and then we also bring in the creatives. Because for me, a huge piece of this also is letting folks understand that you have options, which, you know, in our education system is not necessarily set up that way. So the mentoring program was set up for personal and professional development so that these kids would be exposed. And then we did fun things like take them to prom prom. And I remember really well, there was one time we were on the way to prom prom in a bus with about 40 kids. And I asked them, I said, how many of you have ever been to the beach in prom prom before? One person. And you'll be surprised, just that exposure of going to sit.
There's a lot for the mind.
Kid you not.
Yeah.
And that's what we were trying to do, literally change mindsets. And we believe if you start at that age, today a lot of our mentees have graduated university. And we wanted to create a certain kind of people, and we're doing it. Not in big numbers, but slowly but surely. Now we've reached 1,500.
That's a big number. It's significant because those students who have been reached, they will also, how it's affected them, they'll impart that on someone else. So it's a bigger reach than you think. Yeah.
And we actually had to stop the mentoring program. You know, the education system got a bit messy, and we couldn't handle it, so we just stopped. And last year, mentees came to me and said, we need to restart this, and we want to do it. I said, go for it. Bring me a proposal. I'll make it happen. You know, so it's those are the joys of knowing that you're actually impacting lives. And that's really what we've tried to do all along. And it's working.
That's good. That's really good. Looking back to you living in the DMV area and then now being in Accra, what are the biggest things that you learned there that you think has helped you while you're here in Ghana? Because a lot of people go because they want to get experience and come back. Right. What is the biggest thing that you took from there that you think is helping you here?
There was something to being a young adult thrown in on my own very early on. So I left when I was 18, 19. And you have to fend for yourself. So you grow up, you know, so there's that maturity you build by being in that space. For me, a huge one in the US was for the very first time being defined as Black. And that was a wake-up call for me. My parents are very well traveled. I was fortunate to travel as a kid. And so I was always Ghanaian, and I was always a girl. And Christabel. That's it, you know? And then all of a sudden, I'm Black, and I fought it. I actually fought it for a long time.
Why do you think you fought it?
Well, I fought it because I didn't think it should define me. And I had conversations with a lot of African Americans on campus. It's a predominantly white school. I went to college, and so the Black folk kind of come together naturally. And we would have these conversations where I would push back initially and say, no, slave trade happened on our land. Some of us have our ancestors. I'm a Fanti, so I'm sure my ancestors were part of this. But we've moved on. Can you guys move on? But let me tell you what woke me up. One fine day when we were crossing the street and some guys threw eggs at us and used the N-word. It was all of us. They didn't say African American, African, Ghanaian, no. We were defined. And that honestly was a growing spot for me. And made me want to understand what the history was, what it meant for people to feel like they were in a country but didn't have an identity. And really, maybe fast forward to that's why Ahaspora was formed. You know, this whole learning around the diaspora.
And bridging the gap.
And bridging the gap, because we're the same people, you know? So that was a big one. And then really other little things, little big things like critical thinking, like work ethic, like being on time.
Yes, being on time is a big one that Ghanaians learn when they go abroad.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting that you brought up your experience of recognizing that that's when suddenly you realize you were Black. And then you said something that I've heard Ghanaians say before, was when they say, you know, slavery happened, you know, we're in the time we are now, so can we move forward?
Exactly.
And I think that a lot of times for people on the continent of Africa who haven't experienced what you experienced once you went there, they don't understand until they're put into that position, because it is true, if you're in a group and let's say some racist see you, some police officer sees you, and if they don't like you, you are just another Black person. They're not thinking, is that person from Nigeria? Are they from Ghana? Are they from here? Just like you said. And that's when you realize. There was a woman from Somalia who had moved to Canada, and she wrote an opinion piece in one of the local papers, and she had said she didn't know she was Black until she moved to Canada, because that was when all of a sudden she was Black, because it was always knowing she's Somalian was her identity, as she's Somalian. And so I think that is also something that as Africans can be learned, because what happened with the slave trade affects Black people in America and in other parts of the world, because it's changed it's shaped the consciousness of what the supremacist white society sees of us as a people. So once you realized that, when you came back to Ghana, did you ever try to teach people here about that experience and what it feels like?
So I did it more there. I felt like I became an ambassador to Ghana and Africa in middle of nowhere, Ohio, you know, and literally, actually, interestingly enough, my sophomore year joined a program that was initiated called an ambassadors program, where I came to represent Ghana. But in that, you also, and that's actually, I'll say, one of the learnings was every move you make, you're your country, right? And people don't realize that. You're 19, you're 20, and you are Ghana. You are Africa. Actually, you're Africa first, even before Ghana, right? So there's a piece there also where you have to be intentional about the decisions you make in a way that if you were in your father's house chilling in Accra, you don't have to.
Right.
So that was also a growing piece. And I think it was during that time that I did more, during the Black Students Union, you know, had more of these conversations around what does it mean to be African. I took classes within my college on Afrocentrism, all of that. When I came home, I think one of the things I tried to do, I travel a lot. I love to travel, and I'll do road trips across the country on my own, actually. And in there, I go to like Cape Coast Castle, and then I would actually, I don't know how much it's worked, because just this year at Ahaya there was a lady who came, African-American lady, and she was complaining about the tour guide at the Cape Coast Castle. But that was something I actually tried to do, was to explain to them that you're telling a story that's flat. You know, you're telling a story, yes, it's built in Cape Coast, but I think we need to be intentional, if not in school, at least within the tourism sector, to educate them on understanding. I'll tell you something, Ivy, you'll find this interesting. This lady said she's married to a Ghanaian, right? And she said, when we went to Cape Coast, he paid the citizen fee and they wanted me to pay the Obroni fee. I'm quoting her. And I smiled, right? Because I'm like, yeah, there should be a foreign fee. That's okay, because we need to build some revenue. But for her, she's like, but I'm not a foreigner. I am, and she told me her, what's it called? She had done the ancestry.
DNA
exactly. And she's like, I'm XX percentage Ghanaian. Why can't I be treated like it? And I know it's not a cut and dry, it's very nuanced, but I found that to be very profound. And honestly, she kind of revived my thinking that we really need to be intentional about educating, because you won't know. What you know is what you have. We host now a couple of universities from the United States on an immersion visit, and in the last one we had a whole conversation around what it means to us as Ghanaians going to Cape Coast Castle versus them, and it was just amazing. I actually hope we recorded that, because I should probably try
I was going to say that would be very insightful.
It was really powerful, because part of it also was, so I was the one person that had been to the US and is Ghanaian, and then my team Ghanaian, then one of my team members Ghanaian British, so she had a different perspective, and then now that I say it out loud, I think we should actually do a round table on this. It was really insightful, because the perspectives were quite different. So, Ghanaians would say, well, yeah, we talked about it in school, but for me, that's it. It doesn't mean anything. I go, I see it, And then they were so moved spiritually by everything that had happened. I haven't now been to the castles maybe 20 times because I would keep taking people over. Over time, with the experiences I had, pre-castle was very different than now. As you keep living it and seeing what happened, and then also meeting people that are real.
Yes.
So I think there's also that element to it, is that it's not just a job. It's not just a story you're telling. These are real people whose great-great-grandfathers and mothers went through this experience, and what does it mean? So I do think that that's something that we should advocate to dial up, that people understand. You can't live it, because we didn't live it, but at least understand where people are coming from, because that's building bridges.
I agree 100%. I have noticed at the castle that they have at the slave forts, the dungeons, that they have some people who are very good at, explaining and getting really deep into it. And then there are some people who are just, like you said, flat, very surface level. And they need to have more of the ones who are deep and understand, rather than someone who's just there to get their monthly salary and tell the story. But with respect to the fees, there's a lot of people, because I've worked in the tourism space, I've had experience of a lot of people complaining, why do we have to pay so much more? And I learned from somebody who worked there was telling me that actually the gate fee is the government subsidized for local people. That's what I was told. And they were like, because local people don't usually go. And their salaries are so much lower that it's difficult for them to justify paying to go. So they subsidize it for them. That's what I was told. But still, a lot of Ghanaians don't go.
No. I mean, we have, you're taking me to another space that I'm passionate about, but we have a lot of work to do about increasing local tourism. Like I said, I used to drive out. Like, it was to the point when I first came, my mother would say, just let me know when you get somewhere. Because I literally, after work, and now that I think about it, I actually learned it from the US, because I used to live in New York City and then I moved to Washington. Now, if you've lived in New York, it's so vibrant, and then you move to Washington, and I used to cry every day, I'll be honest. But I had a good job, so I took it, right? So on the weekends, I would pack a bag on Friday morning to the office, and then at 6 p.m., I get on the 95 and I'm going to New York. And I drive out 4 hours there, enjoy my weekend, and come back. So I started doing that, and then I found it to be a nice thinking space with myself. So when I came to Ghana, having lived in New York also, Accra just felt very, very tiny. So I was looking for more, and then I would start traveling around, and I found so many hidden gems in the process.
What were some of your favorite places you've been to?
So there was this place, now I'm not going to remember the name, it was one of my highlights. It's just before Royal St. And it was this small, just simple place that had a pool, bungee jump, but it was like a compound. And then the Volta water was just lying there. It was just beautiful. Another place I like is the Float. I don't know if you've heard of it.
The Floats.
It's also in Akosombo, and the hotel room is in the water.
No, I've seen somebody post about that, but I've not actually been.
I'm a water person, and I spent the night. I was in heaven. I loved it. Now I feel like they've renovated over time, they've really improved it. It wasn't much at the time.
Yeah.
It was, everything is on stilts. So the buildings are on stilts in the water. And then they also had an upper deck. That's where you sit and eat. And that's actually all there was. So really, to be fair, it wasn't a place you would go for a week. But I was there for 2 nights, and just being with myself and water, and literally sleeping in the water. It was amazing. Now I hear they have jet skis and all of. Actually, no, I take it back. I did go on a jet ski when I was there.
Okay.
But they've elevated it some. That was great. St. Chi's lovely. I mean, everything I've said so far is on Akosombo. I love that stretch. I really love that Volta stretch.
And it's an easy road trip to do, even for the day trip.
It's very easy.
Yeah.
Really easy. And that the one trip that I did multiple places. So I did a 4-day trip at Christmas. It was now. And I'm like, okay, bye. And then I just took me and myself, and we started stopping. It was really great.
That's good.
And then there's places I've been to on the Cape Coast stretch also, that there's some nice hidden gems there as well. I just wish the road was better.
That's the biggest challenge with expanding and traveling around the country is the road network is the biggest issue.
It really is.
Yeah, because
really
people don't want to drive at night because there's no light in some of these places. What if something happens? I was on the east-west corridor coming from the Volta region back to Accra, and it was night, it was raining, and we got a flat tire. And we were like, there's nobody.
Dark.
Yeah. There's not like you can call like in the US they have AAA. Canada we have CAA, which is the same thing, and it's like there's nobody to call. So now we were just like hoping to get help. You know, so that's one of the things that people
business idea, people.
Right? It is a business idea. We need it. Yeah. So it's one of the things that makes it difficult going around.
And then street lights.
Yes, the light.
Can we have some lights?
Yes.
Because if we have lights, like I said, like you,
yeah.
I'm a woman. I drove out alone. You know, and I felt safe doing it elsewhere. So I want to do it in my country. And it's very safe, you know, compared to a lot of places. But it would be nice if we help, like have some rest stops, real rest stops, you know, that you can stop. And speaking of rest stops, can we have clean toilets? Like, I have a theory, and my theory is based on nothing. But I feel like our problem with this toilet thing, because I was in like middle of nowhere, Malawi, and they had clean toilets, and this is way back. So I'm like, if they can, and that time they were one of the poorest countries in the world, why can't Ghana have it? And I wonder if it's this idea of bathhouse. Because, you know, the whole bathhouse is not in the it's not in the building. It's like outside there. And then when it goes out there, then it means that nobody's maintaining it because it's for everybody. It's like for the community or something.
Right.
I don't know if it's that, because I don't understand.
I don't know if that's...
I've been to 30-something African countries, and we're way below when it comes to cleanliness of toilets everywhere.
That's really sad. That's really sad. Because I have had people also send me messages who go to... they went to the Vli waterfalls, and they were saying that they felt that the washroom facilities in the area were not to standard. And they email me and say, is there anything you can do to tell, you know, whoever's in authority? Because to go all that way, to go somewhere and have a travel experience, and then now you need to use the washroom, and then it's just kind of like, ugh.
No, even in Accra, I calculate where I'm going based on my washroom use.
Me too.
So we have some work to do there.
We really have work to do. For those of you watching, if you ever travel to Ghana, it's one of the biggest challenges is finding a facility to use for the washroom. You know, and it's not that we're here bashing Ghana, but it's a reality that I'm also strategic about. I'll be like, okay, so where I'm going, okay, Movenpick is there. Maybe I can go in there, use their washroom, and like Kempinski's around here, and okay, I know that this restaurant has. You know, you'd be like, okay, Buka, it's not that bad. Like, you know, you can, a place you can go and use the washroom, because sometimes you go places and you're just like, what is this?
We can do better. We really can. And it's the little things, right? Because look, I dare say year of return is one of the best things that has ever happened to us from where I sit. This is my opinion. But then what is the question, right? And so it's the little things like this, just focusing on the last mile. The road from the junction to Bojo. Why should it take me an hour and a half when I'm like literally there, you know? The washrooms in Kakum, and they've done some work. To be fair, we've seen a lot of improvements, but we can do better. It shouldn't be, a toilet should never be a luxury. Let's just say it like it is, right? It should just be a way of life. It should be the thing, and it should have the needed amenities, and it shouldn't stink. I've seen places, they don't stink. It's possible, right? So like you said, it's not bashing, we're just being real. And also saying it because we know people who are in decision making listen, and this is something that will really boost our tourism experience. That, and maybe also thinking really about supporting persons with disabilities to be able to be part of these. Yes,
because that is another challenge. Huge. People can't go places because it's not wheelchair accessible. So many places.
Yeah, so those are things. If we want to maintain this world-class agenda that we've started, I think those are the pieces that we need to focus in on. Low-hanging fruits, you know, that once we do those, it turns everything up a notch. I don't know how we got here, but it's important.
It is important. It is important. Taking it back to Ahaspora, now, where are things now with Ahaspora after 13 years? What are some of the things that you're doing now, and how can people get involved if someone lands in Ghana today and they're like, I don't know where to go, who to talk to?
So we really dialed up at our 10th anniversary, where we had the Ghana Action Forum, because we wanted to do something that was more thought-provoking, more intentional. And it was an excellent forum where we focused on the Ghana we want, and really talked through trade and investment. The first panel was my favorite, which was really looking at the mindset shift of Ghanaians as Ghanaians, and had phenomenal Ghanaian professionals sharing their views on it. And so that kind of set the stage for where do we want to go. And we want to maintain that space of being a thought leadership group within the society, leveraging the people we have. And so because of that, we have what we call industry webinars, where we focus on a topic area. One of my favorite actually fits in this discussion was we had one a year ago, because now we're in a new year, right? We had one a year ago that was focused on December in Ghana and how to do. I think you were on that.
I think I was.
You were on that, yes. So those kinds of conversations where we try and come up with ideas and tips for people to really elevate what it is they're doing in technology, in real estate, and healthcare. We've had all those. So those will continue happening. And then we initiated Diaspora Roundtables. And actually, Diaspora Roundtables came from the Ghana Action Forum because the forum was set up for us to talk, but to act. And that was my panel I did that had different people from different diaspora groups. And my action was to continue those conversations. And since then, we've had 4 of them that focus on different topic areas. We had Ibrahim Mahama talk about his world work. And to think that at that point, we were the first group in Ghana to celebrate him when the whole world was talking about it. Yes.
Yeah.
So
I still want to interview him.
I will get you that. I'm actually on my way to Tamale tomorrow. I'm going to Red Clay tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
Yes. I promised him a visit and I'm going.
I need to interview him.
So, yes, and I will tell her.
Thank you.
So that you can do that. But I think for me, it's telling our stories, just like what you're doing, is making people realize that when we talk about Ghana, when we talk about Africa, it's different. It's not just about focusing in on whether we have peaceful elections. We're so much more than that.
We are.
Right? There's so many Ghanaians doing amazing things. I just saw that a Ghanaian American was giving a Biden Award for technology.
Yes.
And we're all over the place. We're within the administration working on diaspora affairs, Ghanaians who've gone abroad.
Yeah, there's a Ghanaian who's a head of diaspora at the White House, right? I can't remember her name. It escapes me right now.
But yes, she is. When I went to Ohio, fun fact, and got there and everybody asked, are you Ghanaian? I'm like, yes. Oh, do you know the Fories? And these were 2 cardiologists, husband and wife, middle of nowhere, Ohio. And everybody revered them because they'd saved so many lives in America. So if we can do it abroad, we can also do it here. And we need to showcase. We're doing so much. We're not telling our stories. We need to let people know of these innovative, creative Ghanaians. And that's what we're doing through the roundtable. Have discussions around what is it that we are as Africans. The last one we had was on West Africa and how if we work together, we could scale up. So we had a Nigerian, a Beninois, a Sierra Leonean, and 2 Ghanaians who talked about the work they're doing. One of the Ghanaians actually lives in Nigeria and works in Nigeria. So talked about the work we're doing, but also started discussing how to partner together. So I want to do more of those. In the new year, we're looking to see if we can do a diaspora roundtable in the US to start having those conversations abroad also, so that it's not only the people who happen to get on the plane who have support, but those who never even think about it to see that there's opportunities there. So we really want to be intentional around these conversations about how to fix things together. On this side of the world, we tend to focus a lot on governments, and I really think we should start focusing on us.
I agree.
Because so many of the solutions come from within the private sector, come from within those who are working in various sectors, entrepreneurs, policymakers, everywhere. So we need to dial up that story, and that's what we want to do.
And those are the people who can actually take action without any policies holding them back, any restrictions, any thinking about, I can't do this because of this. We have to submit this. It'll take this long. When you're just the people on the ground, you can just do it and get the ball rolling.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, the majority of such employers are training people. We're training the next generation, right? Just by hiring them, just by putting them in our space, just by showing them how to be world class. So for me, I'm very excited about that, and I want to continue having these conversations that build partnerships, folks making investments. There's a whole bunch of aspirants who are doing real estate together, supporting each other, telling the story of the other. That's how it should be, because collaboration really is the key.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And how do you sustain, because you have an organization that's doing so many great things. Nothing is free. You can't put on events and activities without any financial support. How do you keep it going for so long? 13 years and still going.
You heard my sigh. It has not been easy. It hasn't been easy. Interestingly, what we've done is we've had some projects come to us, particularly on the mentoring side, interestingly, that have helped us kind of keep the doors open. It's a nonprofit organization. There's no profit making in itself, but still it needs to be maintained. And so a lot of conversations we've been having around strategy is how do we ensure that we can keep the doors open? And part of it is, do we make it into a membership dues kind of thing, which if I'm giving advice to anybody who's doing a network, start asking for dues from day one. Because if you don't, coming back to it becomes really difficult. But we've done a lot of what we've done through sponsorships based on different, so for example, you were at a higher day both times, last year and this year as well. We've done it 4 times, and that is celebrating Made in Ghana excellence. The whole idea is we have things we need to showcase. So at that time of the year, people are coming in, and folks at home can bunch together and do that. And so with that, we've really maintained it through different sponsorships. The last 2 years working with Cowbank, we do an entrepreneurship series with MTN. So those kinds of pieces also help us to keep going. But honestly, I really do think that we need to tap more into the diaspora communities abroad and see what opportunities are there also to support us. Another area I mentioned also is we started doing these immersion trips with the U.S., some U.S. universities. Brown University and Dartmouth have become partners to us, and bring in their groups and then come in and get that flavor. I've seen a couple of the groups that have come. Exactly. Yeah. And so that is also another way that we're staying connected to the diaspora. We may have a group from Canada soon. That is in the works as well, so very exciting. So a lot of exciting things happening. Again, most of what I've said is around, while we love to have fun, no doubt about it, but we really want to be known for those that are leveraging the human capital of African returnees and doing big things.
You are definitely doing big things, Christabel. I want to thank you for the time today, talking about what you've done, how you started and built such an important organization in Ghana that's connecting the diaspora with local Ghanaians too, because we're coming together, learning from each other, building with each other. And I think that you're a testament as to what it means to come back home and actually build something.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
We're definitely promoting brain gain. I don't like to talk about the drain. We are bringing people in. We're showing them that it can be done. And I believe that we just need to continue telling our stories, which is why I really appreciate what you do.
Thank you.
There's a lot of space and there's a lot of stories to tell. So let's work together and put Africa out there.
That's it. Put Africa out there.
Yes.
And let's leave it at you giving maybe 2 or 3 pieces of advice to someone who may be out there and may be seeing this and they're thinking about coming home. Whether they were born home or, disconnected because of the slave trade, or, their families from here and immigrated and they were born there, but they want to come back. Anyone of African descent who's thinking, what advice?
My story changed over time. The first one was a one-way ticket. And at that point, I would say, everybody just come home. But I've been back 3 times, right? And so I'd say to everyone, the first and most important is that your brain is here, right? Even if you haven't come yet, be intentional about supporting a kid to go to school, supporting a community health center, hiring some local folk to do some work for you. That isn't the first step. So bring your mind home. That's one. The second one is, if you do come home, be intentional about giving back. And when I say give back, I'm a development worker, so everybody thinks I'm thinking like NGO type. No. Like I said, if you hire young people to work for you or bring them into an internship space, that is giving back. That is showing people how to do things differently. Like I said, work ethic, time management, all of this stuff. And so do come home, and when you come, be intentional about supporting. And then if you can come forever, Ghana's a place.
Ghana is lit.
I'm just saying, Ghana is fun.
Ghana's on fire.
I'm extremely well traveled and I keep wanting to come home. In fact, a lot of my colleagues are just surprised about how I just want to be home, There's something special about the wind and the air in Ghana, and the people and the food and the culture that is just very inviting. So you should come, and then when you come, you should also bring others and be open-minded, right? We do have a system. I insist on this. We have a system. It's just not the same as the one that we're used to from the West. So when you come, be open-minded and make sure that you can be a part of the change movement. I call it joining the progress train.
I like that. Joining the progress train. I like that.
Yes.
I like that.
Thank you.
Now, if they want to support...
That'll be the name of the book I haven't written.
We are waiting for the book.
Thank you.
Now, if someone wants to support Ahaspora, if they want to follow Ahaspora, how can they do that?
So you just visit our website. It's www.ahaspora, ahaspora.com. We have Ahaspora on all social media handles at Ahaspora. So please do stay in touch. You can also email us at info@ahaspora.com, and we'll welcome you. We have people who write to us and tell us they're coming in, and we even have folk go meet you up and make sure that you come and you can be settled, because that's what we do. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Christabel. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. This is a phenomenal woman.
Thank you.
Phenomenal woman, doing amazing things for this continent, not just for Ghana, but for the entire continent. Everything that you're doing is having impact. You may not see it right now, but those things, it's leaving little drops, little crumbs that people are eating up, getting full, and then they're teaching someone else.
Right.
So your impact,
thank you.
That is your legacy.
Thank you so much.
That is your
Thank
legacy.
You. It means a lot.
Your legacy building. And that is one of the most important things. We as a people, you're building legacy. I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
I really am.
Thank you so much.
And when I first saw you, you were a young girl. I saw you in the streets. But now you're a phenomenal force.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for watching today. And all the information on getting in touch with them will be in the description. I will see you next time. Again, my name is Ivy Prosper, telling stories from Africa and the African diaspora. See you next time.